Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at a situation that's honestly pretty heavy.
Yeah.
The escalating violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Right. Okay.
We're specifically going to be focusing on the eastern part of the country,
Yeah.
a region that's unfortunately seen more than its fair share of conflict.
hmm
But recent events with this M23 rebel group
Yeah,
are taking things to a whole new and very alarming level.
absolutely.
Uh,
I think what's really striking here is the immediate human impact.
yeah,
We're not just talking about some abstract political maneuvering or, kind of these power struggles.
right.
We're talking about people.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of people who've been forced from their homes.
Yeah,
Imagine fleeing for your life,
right.
not knowing where your next meal is going to come from,
Yeah.
constantly looking over your shoulder.
Wow.
That's the reality for so many in the DRC right now.
Okay. Yeah, that really paints a picture. And it's not just displacement, right? The UN is reporting some truly chilling details about the violence itself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, we're seeing a level of brutality that is deeply concerning.
Right.
The UN has documented cases of summary executions by the M23.
Wow.
They've also received very credible reports of the M23, occupying places like schools,
Yeah.
hospitals,
Yeah.
further disrupting the lives of those who are seeking refuge.
So you're running from this armed group.
Exactly.
You finally find some semblance of safety.
Right.
And then they take over the very places that are meant to offer shelter and aid.
Exactly.
It's just unfathomable.
Yeah, it's a truly dire situation.
Yeah.
And tragically,
Yeah.
it goes even further.
Oh, no.
We're seeing horrific reports of widespread sexual violence.
Oh, gosh.
And this is being perpetrated by both the Congolese army and the M23 rebels.
Wait, so I'm trying to understand this. These displaced people are running from danger,
Right.
but end up even more vulnerable.
It's a heartbreaking reality, and it's a pattern we see, sadly, often in conflict zones. The UN has documented at least 165 cases of rape.
Gosh.
And this occurred when over 4,000 prisoners escaped
Oh, wow.
Goma's Muzenze prison during an M23 assault.
Okay, that is a lot to take in. It's clear that the M23's advance is a major turning point in this conflict.
Well, absolutely.
But what's driving this surge in violence? What are they after?
Well, they've captured Goma, the
Right.
capital of North Kivu province.
Okay.
And this is significant because it really signifies an escalation in their campaign for control.
Yeah.
And it seems that their sights may be set even further south on Bukavu,
Okay.
the capital of South Kivu province.
I'm seeing a pattern here, and it's one that we see around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Resources often equal conflict. Is that the case here? What's so valuable in the DRC?
You're spot on. The DRC is incredibly rich in mineral resources,
Yeah.
and that's attracting a lot of unwanted attention.
Right.
In fact, the UN Western governments and the DRC itself
Okay.
are all pointing fingers at Rwanda,
Okay.
accusing them of backing the M23
Oh.
to gain control of these resources.
So it's not just an internal power struggle.
No.
There are external forces that are potentially profiting from all of this chaos.
It's a complex situation with, layers of historical baggage,
Mm-hmm.
economic interests, all kind of intertwined.
Right.
And when we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
what we see is how the fight for control over resources
Yeah.
can really fuel these conflicts.
Right.
And it leads to immense suffering for the Congolese people,
Yeah.
while, potentially external actors benefit.
This leaves us with a huge dilemma. On one hand, we see horrific violence that seems to demand some kind of intervention.
Right.
But on the other hand, history is full of examples where outside involvement has made things even worse.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on this?
It's a question with no easy answers. It's easy to say something must be done,
Right.
but the reality on the ground is so much more messy.
Yeah.
There's a real risk of unintended consequences,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with a region that has such a complex history.
So if I'm trying to wrap my head around this,
Yeah.
you're saying condemning the violence is easy,
Absolutely.
but figuring out how to actually HELP without making things worse,
Right.
that's the real challenge.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the people at the heart of all of this.
Right.
Over 400,000 people have been displaced since the beginning of the year alone.
Gosh.
Many of them are living in incredibly vulnerable conditions.
Yeah.
So this adds another layer of complexity to the question of intervention.
That's tough to hear. But is there any argument to be made that maybe some interventions cause more harm than good?
Oh, absolutely.
Historically speaking?
Yeah, I mean, we can't just parachute in with solutions that haven't been carefully considered,
Right.
and we have to be honest about the track record of international interventions in the region,
Yeah.
some of which had been far from successful.
It's such a challenging situation because you have this urgent humanitarian crisis unfolding,
Mhm.
but also the weight of history reminding us that good intentions don't always lead to positive outcomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where understanding the nuances becomes absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond these kind of simplistic good guys versus bad guys narratives
Right.
and really delve into the underlying causes, the historical context, and the variety of perspectives involved.
Okay, so let's try to unpack that a little bit.
Right.
If we're talking about potential solutions,
Sure.
what are some of the key factors that need to be addressed?
Well, for starters, we need to acknowledge that this isn't just about the M23.
Okay.
There are deep-seated issues within the DRC itself
Right.
that create a really fertile ground for conflict.
Like what?
Things like poverty,
Yeah.
inequality,
Okay.
weak governance.
So even if the M23 were to just disappear tomorrow,
Right.
those underlying issues would still be there,
Absolutely.
simmering beneath the surface, ready to spark new conflicts.
Exactly. And then you have the issue of external actors like Rwanda
Right.
potentially profiting from this instability.
Yeah.
As long as there's an incentive for outside forces to exploit the DRC's resources,
Right.
true peace will remain elusive.
This all sounds incredibly complex.
It is.
Where do we even begin to untangle this web of interconnected issues?
It's a daunting task, but I don't think it's an insurmountable one.
Okay.
I think it starts with a commitment to understanding the truly multifaceted nature of this problem.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond just treating the symptoms and focus on addressing those root causes.
Okay. That makes sense. But practically speaking, what does that look like? What are some concrete steps that could be taken?
Well, one crucial aspect is strengthening domestic institutions within the DRC.
Okay.
This includes promoting good governance,
Okay.
tackling corruption,
Right.
and ensuring that the rule of law is upheld.
So it's about empowering the Congolese people to govern themselves effectively
Precisely.
and resist exploitation.
Exactly. And this goes hand in hand with promoting sustainable economic development
Okay.
that benefits all Congolese people, not just a select few or foreign interests.
But that seems like a really long-term goal.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with a very immediate crisis right now.
Absolutely.
What about the hundreds of thousands of people who've been displaced? What can we do to help them?
Of course, humanitarian aid is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Providing food,
Yeah.
shelter, medical care, and other essential services
Mm.
to those affected by the conflict is paramount.
But isn't there a danger? I mean, I've heard this before,
Yeah,
that aid can almost become a crutch,
right.
perpetuating a cycle of dependence rather than promoting self-sufficiency.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it's why it's so important to ensure that aid is delivered in a way that empowers communities
Okay.
and supports long-term solutions.
Okay, so we've got this multi-pronged approach. We're
Mhm.
talking about addressing the root causes,
Right.
promoting good governance,
Mhm.
supporting sustainable development,
Yes.
and providing humanitarian aid. But what about the role of the international community?
Yeah.
What can they do beyond just sending aid?
That's where things get really interesting.
Oh, how so?
Well, for one, they can play a crucial role in holding perpetrators of violence accountable,
Okay.
regardless of their affiliation.
So that means...
This means investigating human rights abuses,
Okay.
imposing sanctions on those responsible,
Right.
and supporting international justice mechanisms.
So it's about sending a clear message that impunity won't be tolerated,
Exactly.
that those who commit atrocities will be held responsible.
Absolutely. And beyond that, the international community can support peace-building initiatives,
Okay.
facilitate dialogue between warring parties,
Right.
and work to address the regional tensions that contribute to the conflict.
It sounds like a monumental task.
It is.
Requiring coordination and cooperation on a massive scale.
Yeah.
But is there any reason to be optimistic that this kind of comprehensive approach could actually work?
I think it's crucial to remain hopeful. While the challenges are immense,
Right.
we've seen examples in other parts of the world where similar approaches have led to positive change.
Okay.
It requires a long-term commitment,
Yeah.
a willingness to learn from past mistakes,
Right.
and a recognition that there are no quick fixes.
So it's not about imposing solutions from the outside,
Right.
but about supporting the Congolese people in their own pursuit of peace and stability.
Exactly. It's about recognizing their agency,
Yeah.
their resilience,
Mm.
and their right to determine their own future.
Right.
And it's about understanding that lasting peace can only be built from within.
That's a powerful message. But let's be realistic. This is a region that's been plagued by conflict for decades.
It has.
Is there any reason to believe that this time could be different?
I understand that feeling. It is hard not to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like, how do we shift the tide after so much suffering?
Exactly.
And I think that's where each of us, even as individuals, far removed from the conflict,
Yeah.
can play a role.
Wait, really? What can someone sitting at home listening to this actually do about something so complex?
It starts with awareness,
Okay.
with understanding the situation beyond just the headlines.
Yeah.
And then it's about using your voice,
Okay.
talking to friends and family,
Right.
sharing what you've learned,
Yeah.
pushing back against those simplistic narratives that often dominate the conversation.
So educating ourselves is the first step.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that. But does that really make a difference?
It does,
Mhm.
because it builds a more informed and engaged public,
Okay.
which in turn can put pressure on governments and institutions
Right.
to take meaningful action.
Yeah.
And there are other ways to get involved.
Okay.
Supporting organizations that are working on the ground in the DRC,
Right.
whether that's through donations or volunteering.
So it's not about feeling powerless.
No,
It's about finding ways to contribute however small they may seem.
exactly.
And maybe those small actions collectively can start to build momentum for change.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's where hope lies.
Okay.
It's not about expecting a miracle overnight,
Right.
but it's about recognizing that even amidst immense suffering,
Yeah.
there's always a possibility for progress.
It's like we've talked about the darkness,
Hmm.
the horrific violence, the exploitation.
Right.
But you're saying there's also this flicker of light, this
Mhm.
potential for a better future.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that potential lies within the Congolese people themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Their resilience, their determination to build a more peaceful and just society.
Right.
Our role is to amplify their voices,
Okay.
to support their efforts,
Yeah.
and to advocate for solutions that prioritize their well-being.
This deep dive has been a roller coaster.
Mhm.
Heavy, informative, and ultimately, I think, hopeful. It's
Yeah.
a situation that demands our attention,
Absolutely.
our empathy,
Yeah,
and a willingness to engage with the complexity.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about conflict over resources, but imagine for a moment a world where those resources were used to empower communities,
Yeah.
to create opportunities,
Right.
to build a future where everyone in the DRC could thrive.
That's a great thought.
It's a vision worth striving for,
Yeah.
and one that requires us to rethink our relationship with resources and with each other.
That's a powerful image to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It was my pleasure.
We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to learn more about this critical issue,
Yeah.
and maybe even to find your own way to contribute to a brighter future for the DRC.